For me, drumming has become something now that it's not just because it's musical. I love that part of it, and I love playing with other people. But for me, it's one of the greatest mental cleansers that I have. It's like mental floss. Sometimes between meetings, I'll run downstairs and I'll throw a song on or I'll put a lesson on, and I'll play for 10 or 15 minutes. And that clears my head. You know, a lot of people go for a walk, a lot of people have a cup of coffee, whatever it is. But for me, drumming has become kind of that energizer activity.
Welcome back to the Drum Show podcast. I'm really excited about our guest today because they're a student of mine. I've known Jim, or Pooley, as we affectionately call him around here, for a couple of years now, and he's come to drum camps that we've had here, which registration just opened for the 2024 season. We're already half sold out, so it's been open for like a week and a half. Please, if you are interested, the link is in the show notes, but definitely don't wait around because the spots will not be there. We have everything from level 1 beginner to we're adding a level 3 this year. So Pooley is a student of mine and has been for a couple of years online. He's in my online drum school, the Drum Better Daily program. And I've wanted to start doing student interviews for a while now. I think they're really, really important. And I think, you know, similar to a case study, if you're a business person and let me see a case study of this ice cream business, because they're similar to me. Different business, but they're still a business person, and you can learn things. And I think it's really important to have great guests. I just got off a interview with Adam Gust, who focuses on the somatic side of drumming and how that integrates with, the mental side. But then I think it's very, very important to also have these conversations with people that are very much just like me and you. They're just like, I think I want to play the drums. I think is this too late? I get a lot of big question I get. Is it too late to learn the drums? I've had people that are 22 say, I think it's a little, or excuse me, my mic's cutting out. If that keeps happening, I'll get new batteries. But they'll say, I think I'm too late to learn the drums. And I'm like, okay, you're 22. It's not too late. So Pooley, tell me about what you do in life outside of drumming, so everybody can kind of get some context, because I know you teach at a collegiate level. You're a published author, very accomplished man.
Oh, thank you very much. A Renaissance man. Yeah, of course.
Renaissance man.
Yeah. So I always tell people when they ask me, a little bit of what I do, I always start off by saying I'm a recovering engineer. So I have 2 engineering degrees, and I didn't like engineering as a career, so I switched into technical sales early in my life. But these days, after kind of a long, sort of circuitous route through the corporate world, I am a university lecturer at Bentley University, where I teach sales and marketing courses, and I run the professional sales program there. I'm a sales trainer and consultant for a company called Force Management, and I work with clients every week, some mostly on Zoom, a lot in person as well, doing some consulting and then training of salespeople. But the thing I'm sort of most passionate about in life is the book that I wrote, How to Be a Well-Being, which is all about happiness and well-being. And I do a lot of professional speaking around that. I go do keynotes for corporate events, speak with corporate teams, and those are my 3 career, so that's the Venn diagram, the 3 things that I do professionally. And I love all of it. I came to all of that late in life. Speaking about learning drums late in life, I think, I'm 61, and I didn't really start putting all those 3 things together until my 50s, late 50s, early 50s or so. And I love what I do. I never think about retiring. I think I'm a teacher at heart. And so the more I can just help people learn things, the happier I am. So that's me in a nutshell.
I like it. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have Pooley on was, in just a couple of years of playing, he is now doing what many people have not done in 10 or 15 years of playing. He's playing out regularly. He's going to jams. He's in a band. The last time we talked, he was in multiple bands, had other people want to be in a band. He's like living the 19, 20-year-old life. He's going to move to New York here pretty soon and be part of the new scene. But and he's been able to do it in a relatively short time. And I push a lot of my students, as soon as they're able to play with other musicians. Absolutely, as soon as you're able to start playing the music. That should be a daily component of your practice time, by the way. If you're not doing that, put music into your practice time. Put aside some time to be playing the music every day. But as soon as I can push people to get out of their shell and go play with other musicians, A, it hooks them on the instrument in a deeper way, but
Yeah.
B, the development and the speed with which that development comes is so much different than if we're just in a classroom or you're watching videos and learning. And that came from my own life. I had a drum set for just a couple of weeks, and minister of music of my church came up and said, "Hey, your mom told me you were a drummer." And I said, "My mom was wrong. I have a drum set. I'm not a drummer yet. I'm working on, and I was 14, and he said, "No, our drummer left. I need a drummer. Can you come this Sunday?" I said, "Look, I don't think you understand. I really can't play the drums.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Watch my hands."
Right.
And I'm like, that's not good advice. He's a piano player. So sure enough, that weekend I played a men's breakfast. I played a youth service Saturday night, and then Sunday morning service. I mean, it was, they had rehearsals with it. And I was holding on by the skin of my teeth. But the speed with which this information was being processed, because it was all very, the ship's going down if you don't get this together. I learned so much quicker, and Pooley has jumped in with both feet. And so first off, I know before the call started, and I press record because a lot of times the best stuff with interviews,
I know.
You jump on the call and then you're just
because you're not thinking about it. You're just talking off the top of your head, and sometimes that's where the best stuff sits, right there.
It really is. And we were talking about this kind of epiphany you had later in life that led you to career change, but also led you to, I'm guessing, new experiences like drumming.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things I started drumming during COVID, during the pandemic, right? So, everyone had more time on their hands because nobody was commuting. I was teaching classes online as opposed to doing it in person. So I wasn't driving to Bentley University, every other day. And I had always wanted to play the drums. I played the drums for, I always tell people, I played the drums for like 5 minutes in 6th grade. Like I was in the school band, rented a snare drum, played a few songs on, for a couple of, school assemblies or whatever. But that was it. That was really it. My parents had bought me a drum set, but I never practiced. I took like 1 or 2 lessons, and I just didn't have the discipline. So I never did, right? I didn't consider that, having played the drums previously. It was like a 5-minute, interaction with it. I always liked the drums, but I never really engaged with them. So when COVID came along, I had been thinking about playing the drums. I always did think about playing the drums. Like, how could I take some lessons? How can I get started? So I just borrowed somebody's practice pad, a little remote practice pad, and I borrowed a pair of drumsticks because at the height of COVID, you couldn't even buy stuff online because everyone was out. Apparently everyone decided to play drums, and there were no drumsticks available on Amazon or anywhere else. And so anyway, I borrowed some stuff. I just watched a few videos online. And then I tried to figure out how to get better at it. Then, just playing on a pad was fine, but you get a little bored because you want to play on the kit. So that year for Father's Day, I told my family, I said, I don't want any other gifts except a small electronic drum kit. That's what I want. And my wife looked at me like, what? I said, I want to play the drums. And my mom, who's, in her 80s, says, you're going to play the drums? Like, what are you thinking you're going to do? You're too old. So, even, dear old mom was like, what are you, nuts? So I got this a Little Lisa's Nitro mesh kit. It was awesome. It was just perfect for what I needed. And it was probably around that time I came across your videos. I was just kind of going online and looking for videos that I could follow along with. And I was thinking about this interview beforehand, Stephen. The funny thing was, so I watched a bunch of your videos, and some of them were old, like, 10 years in the past, right? Because you've been doing this a long time. And I'm like, look at this guy. He was so young. Now he's getting a little older with each successive, set of videos. But that was one of the reasons I reached out to you, because I said, first of all, he's got a great personality. He's humble. He's got some humor built into it. He knows what he's talking about. And he's been doing it for a long time. He's not some flash in the pan. And that was probably late 2020, early 21 when I reached out and we had a little conversation. And I said, I think I want to take lessons. I didn't know what to make of it, how to do it or anything. But you were great. You kind of, laid it out for me. And I think for a lot of people when they get started, one of the things that when they ask me, what was tricky in the beginning, you can go on YouTube and you can search for drum lessons and you can find everything you need out there. But the problem is none of it's like curated or collated or put into any kind of particular order. So the first thing you need is a path. right? You need the Warrior Way, you need the Drum Better Daily program, you need something to keep you focused on how to improve the skills you need over time. But then I think the second thing is you need someone to kind of have a conversation with from time to time to say, all right, I'm stuck on this, or I'm trying to learn that, or I'm getting a little bored of this lesson. What can I try for, you need that interactive piece. And so once I got that then my skill really accelerated, because I thought, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing when I sit down with the kid. I'm not wasting time. And I'm incorporating music early on. I started using music as part of my practice routine.
And that's, not to interrupt you, but
No,
that's,
right.
that it's a very similar story, or very similar talking points that I have with a lot of people, where the internet is so great at giving us information. It's a wonderful place to have information, to find information. It's a really, really bad place to organize information.
Absolutely.
And it's really bad at organizing that information for you.
Yeah.
And so the biggest issue, I did a poll on my YouTube channel a couple weeks ago, and last time I checked, there was almost 2,000 responses. The biggest thing holding people back was, I don't know what to work on.
Yes.
The second biggest thing was lack of motivation. And I'm here to tell you, I've never had lack of motivation with the drums, but they're one and the same, in that if we're presented as a beginner, you already don't know how to do it.
Right.
And then you're sourced with trying to figure out, how do I learn this thing that I don't know how to learn?
Right.
And you have all this information. Well, who's a respected thing? And then you also, that's very demotivating, because you don't see that forward progress, and not being certain that you have a path that's been trodden before, and someone kind of showing the way that's done this before. That uncertainty really is demotivating, and makes a lot of people bail. And so, with the Drum Better Daily program, I'm very, very specific with people. This may not be for you. You may be the person that likes to jump around and aimlessly wander through lessons. It's really not what we do here. I would prefer that you plug in. I would prefer that you pick a couple of areas. I'll help you if you need. Some people need help. Some people can self-assess. It just depends. The more the beginner they are, the more help they need with that.
Yeah.
And but I mean, that's the thing. You could sign up for the program, and you literally can jump into the Warrior Way, and it's what you need. It's exactly, if you've just started, that you don't need to, I'm going to tell you to go do that, and then we have weekly calls. We're going to go on a call here in about 30 minutes. Where we talk through this stuff, and so your story is very similar to a lot of other people's in that.
Yeah. But I think,
This podcast is brought to you by the Drum Better Daily program. That's actually my online drum school that I've run now for 12 plus years. Not only have I been playing the drums professionally since the age of 15, I've been teaching since the age of 18. Matter of fact, I talked to one of my first student a few days ago. I actually called him to see if he could sub a gig out for me. Daniel, love you, man. And he's still playing. He's still doing it on a pro level. I would love to have you go check it out at stevensdrumshed.com. You can find a link to that in the show notes or video description, whichever platform you're watching it on. But it truly is a community of like-minded drummers where we are striving to just be the best that we can be at the drums. In addition to over 70 pre-recorded drum courses, there's also a tech talk area where we talk about everything technology related as it pertains to the drums, e-kits, recording, doing videos, all of that stuff. There are forums where you can hang out with the other students as well. We do 2 live video student calls every week that you can join if you'd like to. We do guest artist calls monthly, and I'll even make you a personalized lesson plan if that's what you need. Yes, we talk about the nuts and bolts of drumming. Yes, I give you exercises, but we also talk a lot about how to practice more efficiently, how to practice better, and how to get more out of your practice time. I know you're just like me. You're busy, you're being pulled by work, by family, by friends, by other responsibilities. Whenever you practice, you really want to see gains and have it be productive. That is what we focus on in the Drum Better Daily program. I'll have to say personally, it's been really cool because some of these students I've worked with for over 12 years, we started running drum camps last year in 2022, and I got to meet some of them in person for the first time. Those drum camps have been selling out. They've been just blowing my mind with how much fun they are and how great a time it is to bring the community together in person. A community that was started online and has been going online strong now for over 12 years. I'd love to have you be a part of it.
Again, when I was telling people I was learning how to play the drums, I got some really close friends that I've known for 40 years, right? and they chuckle. They're like, "What? Do you have any musical talent? We've never seen it, right?" I'm like, "Well, I think I can keep a beat, and a lot of them now are sort of retiring. They're in their 60s, right? And they're starting to retire, and they're starting to ease into their post-retirement thing, which might be golf, which I play. It might be boating, which I'm happy to go on anyone else's boat who wants to take me for a ride. Some of them are doing a little bit of consulting, dabbling. So they've got their sort of retirement kind of end of career plans, which is great. But mine is drumming. Like I got to the point where I started thinking about this in terms of like, what do I want like the next 20 years to look like, right? Because I'm 61 and I plan to live at least another 20, 40 years, right? I'll go as long as they'll let me, right? But
Yep.
for me, drumming has become something now that it's not just because of it's musical. I love that part of it, and I love playing with other people. But for me, it's one of the greatest mental cleansers that I have. It's like mental floss, right? I've got an electronic kit in the basement right under my office, my home office. Sometimes between meetings, I'll run downstairs and I'll throw a song on or I'll put a lesson on and I'll play for 10 or 15 minutes. And that clears my head. A lot of people go for a walk, a lot of people have a cup of coffee, whatever it is. But for me, drumming has become kind of that energizer activity. And part of it is because I have seen progress, right? So I feel good about it. So I'm confident in my ability. I feel good about being able to drum. I just enjoy hearing it, and I'll record myself occasionally just to kind of hear how, I'm doing. But but for me, it's become like this thing that it has helped me feel more energetic in other things that I do, because it's something that I look forward to, and when I'm done doing it, I just feel more energy, not less. And to your point about not feeling lack of motivation, I've never felt lack of motivation. I played with that's a printer going off in the background if you can hear it. I played with some folks that are trying to put a band together over the weekend, and we played for about 4 hours on Saturday, just trying to learn some song. Maybe it's like one of these experimental things. Let's see if this will turn into anything. And literally on the ride home, I thought, I wonder if Mrs. Pooley is home, because I'd like to get home and help in the kit and try some of the things that we were trying there. I want to work some things out. So for me, that was like, that's a pretty good sign that this is not just a hobby. It's something that I'm really kind of passionate about now, because I just spent 4 hours playing live and I want to go home and play some more.
Yeah.
And
it's, to your point of friends, kind of questioning. I had somebody that came to one of the camps and they said, when you're a kid and you're learning something new, everybody's very, very supportive. And whenever you play a recital, they say, "Oh, wasn't that cute? It wasn't great, but boy, that's really cute that they were trying. They tried hard. What an effort." Yeah. When you become an adult, they're like, did you hear Pooley? Boy, it wasn't, and it's like this thing, you have this self-conscious thing. So in my life for years, when I was transitioning my career, there was a time where I needed to quit playing music to begin to do the thing I'm doing with music right now. It was a very intentional, let me stop that, let me do this until I can do this. When I was doing that, I had a fellow that I followed. His name was Hugh McLeod, and he was in the advertising industry, artist, I believe, in New York. And he had this manifesto that he had written and just put it on the internet. It had over 1 million downloads. And it had to do with evil plans. Everybody has their evil plan, right? And that's the thing you don't tell anybody about. You just do it in your spare time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to tell you about it because you'll ruin it. I don't, I don't want this to be tainted by money or by something like that. I want to just do it. And his was, he drew on the back of business cards.
Okay.
Because he always had to meet clients in these bars, and he said they're always late. Everybody's exchanging business cards, so I've always got these business cards. I don't know what to do with them. He said, so while I'm sitting there waiting on them, miserable, he said I would doodle on the back of these cards things that I couldn't put in ads. He said they would be asinine jokes. Maybe they'd only make sense to me, and I thought this is pretty funny. And he said, and then I had a folder, and I just put them in there and forget about them, And he said, but I did this every day on the subway. I did it waiting for people. It was my evil plan, right? And so I have things in my life that I don't tell anybody about that I'm doing. And I have a folder in my Google Drive, And I have a personal and work with all my
Yep.
projects. And in my personal, I have a folder that says evil plans. And inside of that folder is 4 other folders. And they're my
Yeah.
evil plans. They're the
Yeah.
things I'm working on that
Right.
people, I'm not going to tell
Yeah.
you about it yet. I'm just
Yeah.
going to keep doing it. And, you know, so anyway, I think that's really, really important to have.
Yeah.
We
Have
often
some evil plans. You got to have
Exactly.
some evil plans.
Yeah, and he actually, I think, wound up releasing a book, and it became a, you know, a thing or whatever. Although I like the original download manifesto much better. It's much more raw.
Yeah. Well, for me, that's, so it was, I was taking lessons from you and making some progress. And then, you had encouraged me to play with other musicians. And that's like one of those inflection points, I think, for someone who's learning an instrument, learning drums for the first time, really. It's like, ooh, Stephen wants me to go play live with other musicians, right? And I recall, I think it was on one of your live calls with a bunch of other students, one of the early ones that I was on. I think I asked a question. I said, when do you know you're a drummer? Like, how do you know you're a drummer, not just somebody who's trying to play the drums? And you said the moment you pick up the sticks and hit something, you're a drummer. I mean, that, now you've got to work on becoming a better drummer over time. So for me, it was in the back of my mind, like, how am I going to go find some folks to play with? Like, who do I approach about this? Like, will you play drums? Will you play music with me? I just learned how to play the drums, and I didn't want to wander into an open mic night cold, right? And so, but just again, once you start talking about this stuff and sharing it with other people, things happen, right? So August, I remember this, it was August of 2022, last August, I was having dinner with 5 or 6 folks that we'd all gone to elementary school together. It was like a little elementary school reunion. It was awesome. We hadn't seen each other in years, and we're all like 60 something years old, sitting there talking to a couple of folks. And two of the guys that I knew back then were very accomplished musicians, and both of them have been in bands pretty much their whole adult lives, but I hadn't seen them, right? And so, Pooley, what are you up to these days? Blah, blah, blah. And I mentioned that I had started learning how to play the drums. They're like, oh, have you played out yet? I'm like, no, I haven't played out yet. Are you nuts? They said, well, one of them goes to this open mic night, which is about 20 minutes from my house. He goes, I go to this open mic night at TJ Callahan's, every Thursday night. He goes, you should come watch one. Let's come see how it works. And I did. And then I was like, I want to do this. Like, I want to get up there. And I want to play music with other musicians because, after a while, you're just playing at home, listening to a drumless track, playing along with, that's fine, But so these guys were kind enough. One of them was driving 90 minutes to my house for a couple of months, every other Saturday. They came and they met me. They set up their gear in my family room. By then, I had an acoustic kit up in the family room, and I had the electric kit in the basement. But we'd set up, we picked 5 or 6 songs we worked on, and their whole intent was to get me ready to go play at an open mic night. So Halloween of 2022, so less than, about a year ago, we show up at open
Now,
mic.
how long was that after you had started playing?
About a year of lessons.
About a year.
Less than a year, because I think I started in 2020, early 2020, or mid. It was probably a year and a half of lessons, maybe a year and a half of lessons.
Okay. My son I think Jackson was 8 or 9 months. He had been dabbling and not practicing consistently, that he wound up starting to play with his youth group band. So I always like to kind of know like the timeline.
Right. When I look back on that, I realize I could have done it months before that. Right. I think I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Right. I'm like, I'm going to get up on stage. People are going to realize I'm a newbie. But not really, because when I got together with these guys and we're playing at my house, it was sounding pretty good, And one of the first comments was, you keep pretty good time. That's like they said, that's one of the things that we're always worried about with new drummers, is just keeping time. And that's job number one, right? And they said a lot of guys speed up and slow down. And I found it easier to keep time with other musicians around me because everyone's kind of keeping time, right? So you kind of work together on that. So we go to this open mic night. I show up. My wife was there. Some friends of ours from. So not only do I go to the open mic night, right? I bring like people to watch me for the first time ever, right? So
I don't know that I would have been brave enough to do that.
Let's put some more pressure on it, right? And we got up and we played 3 songs, and it was awesome. I mean, it went great. And another thing you often say, you talk about how you almost lost your job as a drummer because you couldn't get people to dance at one point, right? And I remember we were playing, I think we were playing like Pump It Up, the Sammy Hagar version, not the Elvis Costello version, a real hard driving one. And people were dancing. like it was a bar, right? So people were up dancing, and I thought, people are dancing, and I'm playing the freaking drums, and they're dancing, right? Now, of course, I think it was a little bit alcohol infused as well, but
sure. Yeah,
they
you
were
know.
dancing, right? And we finished those first 3 songs. You get 3 songs at open mic night at this place, and the guy who runs it leans over. Now, the singer, the bass player singer, was telling the audience, "This is Pooley's first time behind a kit in front of a live audience. Let's hear it for Pooley." I'm like, shh, come on, now ixnay on the announcements, right? So we get to the end of the 3rd song, and the guy who runs it, this friend of mine, TJ, now he says, "Do you guys know any others? Play another song." Now that's unusual because it's usually 3 songs and you're out because other people. So we played a 4th song. We had another one, in the queue, and we played it, and it ended, and then it was awesome, right? I felt this great feeling like, man, this is it. This is what I want to do, play live. A couple weeks later, I was back at open mic night. I started going on my own, and this past Halloween was about a year of open mic nights. I've been there. I was looking at my calendar. I've only missed a handful. I've probably been there 45 times this past year because it's every Thursday night. And
it's every Thursday.
And it's on my calendar. I go, I show up. Now, you never know who you're going to play or what songs you're going to play. You can coordinate that a little bit ahead of time. But for me, that has been the most compelling sort of external push to get better at it, right? Because there's been nights where, the timing's not great, or I miss a fill or whatever. Some of these open mic night guys are a little bit more hinky than the others in terms of the way they want it to sound. So some of them get a little upset if you don't play it quite the right way. But for the most part, people I've met there have been awesome, super supportive. They understand that I'm fairly new to this, but it's the one thing that forces me to keep learning more stuff, because I want to show up and be better each time. And
well, and it's funny. I'm reading this book right now, Meet Me in the Bathroom. I mentioned it on Student Live Calls. It's about the rock scene in New York, early 2000s. So for anybody listening, the Strokes, the Hives, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, the Libertines, the National, a lot of those. Kings of Leon kind of came out of that too. There's a lot of bands that came, the Strokes. And I just got to this part where they bring in the Kings of Leon. The Strokes had hit, and now it's Kings of Leon. Not only them, but you would be amazed at the number of bands that started and they didn't know how to play any instruments. Yeah. They were maybe just artists, and they were like, no, we actually saw this as kind of an asinine art form that we could express ourselves. And turns out we only needed to learn a couple of things and we could start writing songs. And serious musicians are like, that's not how it works. You have to put in 15 years. And it's like, actually, no, most of these bands don't. So Kings of Leon talked about when they got signed to the record label, they didn't even have a full band. The guys that were going to be in the band didn't even play instruments. They were learning their instruments, and they had like this label deal. It's crazy. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be that hard.
It doesn't.
Just start creating. Doesn't. We're creative individuals. Just jump in with both feet. Yeah. You'll figure it out.
And the collaborative part of it is the part I really love, right? Because along the way, I've learned that I love the blues. I never really had an appreciation for the blues until I started playing drums. And then I met a couple of folks that like to play the blues at these open mic nights. Now, most of the music that's played there is kind of classic rock and pop rock, but there's a handful of people that love the blues. And so when I heard it the first time, I was like, okay, I'm going to get better at the shuffle, right? I'm going to get better at the slow blues groove, and really worked on that. And now, that's one of the things I look forward to the most on Thursdays, because one of my buddies, Reed, who's a great blues guitar player, really great blues guitar player, shows up, and we always play 3 songs together. And just getting up there with someone who is enthusiastic and talented at it, and also good enough so that I feel like I don't have to know it 100%, but I have the trust that I can kind of follow what he's doing and what the bass player is doing, and I can keep the time, and I don't need to worry about the flourishes and the fills and the accents, because they're either going to cue me or it's going to come to me naturally. But all that has come just because I've forced myself to go play with other people, right? And
so lecturing at universities, you're a consultant, you're talking, you published books, you're talking about this, and now moonlighting rock star. We're adding that to
of course,
what Pooley does. So let me ask a little bit about the learning process. Sure. What was the biggest hurdle you had to get over when you first started?
The biggest hurdle. That's a great question. I so when I think back on like the thing that frustrated me the most in the beginning was getting my limbs to just sort of kind of be independent of one another. I mean, so in terms of like the physical, the the muscle memory or the mental, memory of getting my four limbs to do different things. Because I remember like the money beat, right? That's the first beat everyone learns, right? And that's awesome, right? Once you learn it, it's great. And then one of the lessons, it's like, all right, now you're gonna kick the bass drum on the 16th note, on the of three. And you're like, what? Whoa, no, that just throws everything off, right? So, but the thing I learned about that was the struggle to do that all got a lot easier when you really force yourself to slow down. Just slow down and literally go so slow that it doesn't even sound like music or a groove. You're just telling your brain, what am I doing here? Kicking on this, hi-hat over here, snare over there. Oh, here's another kick. And then back to the snare. And I find if I talk through it literally out loud like that, I think it helps build that mental, muscle memory, if you will. And I know you and we share this favorite quote, right? Bruce Lee, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? And that's exactly, I think in the beginning, you sit at the drum kit, you want to go fast. It's just one of those things like sitting behind the wheel of a Ferrari. You want to go fast, but you can't. You got to learn how to shift gears. You got to learn how to turn the car on. You got to learn all the basic stuff first. But then if you practice it enough, suddenly it becomes natural, right? And that's the thing I notice when I sit down and play with other musicians, especially songs. If I've never played it, I'll say, what's the tempo? Is it a basic rock beat? Is it a shuffle? Once you know that, you can play like 80% of things that people throw at you. So I think in the beginning it was the limb independence and also that frustration after trying to do it on my own of not knowing what I should be learning in what sequence. Those two. Yeah.
One of the things that I follow up with that, quote that is Bruce Lee and it's an old shooter's adage, guys that shoot guns and do that in competition, maybe arrows as well. They have the same types of sayings. Speed is a natural byproduct of learning something well. If we learn the initial motions and the movements, the speed takes care of itself. Once we learn the brake and the gas and where the blinkers are,
right, taking
a driver from 0 to 20 miles an hour is pretty hard for them to get. But once they get that down, going to 70s it happens pretty quick, Yeah. And I think that it's really important to understand that slowing down in the beginning is very important. The other thing about playing with people at such an early stage in your development is we begin to develop these other musical muscles that cannot develop in a room by yourself. So whenever I auditioned for the group that I've been now touring with for over a year, Pooley came out to the show in Boston.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome.
And we had dinner and hung out. And I got there. We didn't have a rehearsal. I had to get to this. We were opening for, and I'm going to forget the name of the band. Anyway, it was an opening slot for this group. And it's the only time I've had to play another person's drum set on this gig. Was my first gig with them. So I show up, I haven't met half the band. I only know the bass player. I'm getting on stage. They tell me I can't use the drum kit that I brought. They hand me this iPad and said, here, you'll be running the set from this that I've never seen. And I have these songs that I've just learned. And I'm sitting there going, none of that has to do with your drumming. At that point, there are a lot of other skills that have to come into play for this to be a successful point, and the lead singer turned around and I'm sitting there. The drummer on this kit was very, very short. I don't want to say short. He was not as tall as I was. Anyway, he had cut the hi-hat off to where it was shorter. I mean, I was sitting on the ground. Yeah. And the singer turned around and he said, you good? And I said, does that matter right now? Let's just count it off. It's going to be fine. Once we're in, we're good, because once the ball's rolling. And so there's so many skills that I had to hone outside of what's this exercise, what's this beat, what's this drum fill, what's the song form. And so at that point, my ears were huge, my eyes were huge. And I'm just like, just trying to understand what's coming at me and I've had other instances where it's been similar situations where the skills that I've honed on stage are much, much more important. And that's
Right.
that intuitive part of us.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
starts to respond. You can
Yeah.
feel it and you're like, I'm not certain we're ending, but I'm pretty sure we are.
Right.
Nobody's cued me, but I feel, and
Yeah.
those feelings are real important, and we can
Right.
only hone those things. We can only
Yes.
work on those skills on the stage.
Stephen, it's one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about your experience, walking into that situation. I think something, sort of something that came up later as I was starting to learn. Before I had played live with other people, and it came later, and it was a little bit of a disappointment or something that was like a little bit of another sort of a secondary challenge, right? Once I could kind of play grooves and play along to a metronome, then you start to play the music, right? And then you start to learn songs. And so you learn some easy songs in the beginning, like everyone learns Billie Jean, right? It's everyone's first song on drums, right? But then you start to play some things that are not quite, straight money beats. And then there's some fills that are a little bit more iconic and things. And I think for a lot of drummers, I know I experienced this in the beginning, it became a little bit of an impediment to try to play along with, drum tracks like that, listening to these wonderfully engineered, perfect drum tracks, trying to replicate them. And I don't know at what point this occurred to me, but I got to the point where I was able to access, drumless tracks and just play the groove and play my own fills, my own transitions, and kind of interpret the music. That comes back to that sense of your intuitiveness about the music. Once you learn song structure and being able to play along with it, you don't have to play it exactly like it is on the recording. And frankly, that's what most people want to hear anyway. They want to hear your interpretation of it, unless it's that iconic, Phil Collins drum fill, right? But that really opened up possibilities for me, especially when you play live with other people, because they're not playing it like it's on the recording either. They're close, but they're not exactly replicating it. So suddenly you can play along with other musicians. Sometimes it's easier to do that than it is to try to play along to a well-engineered, song with a drum track that people know really well, because you're comparing yourself to someone who's, doing it professionally, right? So,
and this is something that's where we find out who we are on the drums. I was just talking about this in my interview with Adam Gust, which is also on the podcast, or will be soon. And we were talking about, I said I had a student come in that had graduated college and wanted to just kind of book a, where do you think I am, my development type of thing. And so they sat down, they said, I have this song I prepared for you. It was very collegiate. The song I prepared for you, they sat down with the sheet music and open it up and they played the song and all the notes are going by and they're, hitting them perfect. Fantastic player,
Right. Yeah.
And he got done, he said, well, what do you think? I said, I think you're a great reader. And I think you played exactly what was on the page. And he said, he said, well, what else? I said, my mic's cutting out here. I said, I still don't know what you sound like on the drums.
Yeah, right.
And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're a very good reader. You can play this song. You knew the song form. You can read those notes well. Technically, you had no issues. I said, but as far as like who you are and what you sound like playing that song,
right,
that's where you're going to make your living, is if you figure out who that guy is.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important to kind of go, well, who is Pooley? How would he play this song?
Exactly. And so now what I often do is I use an app like Moises. If I'm trying to learn a song, I'll listen to it to get the basic groove down. But then I use Moises to kind of break the song up and remove the drum track from it entirely and just play along to it, trying to come up with my own stuff. And, I'll record it and listen to it, or I'll just keep working at it. And I find that takes a lot of pressure off, right? Because you don't want to try to be perfect, right? You don't want to, unless that's your goal. Like my goal is to play live. I want to be in a band or two, play on the weekends, play at bars. I just want to play live with people at the local level. But if you want to become a studio musician, of course, then obviously you got to be better at reading and playing exactly what the music director wants you to play and all that. But I think for most people at my age who are learning the drums at the first time, they just want to hang with some buddies and go out and play. And that's what I'm happy doing. So
I like it. Well, man, thanks for taking the time. We've got a student call that starts in about 7 minutes. So
I'll see you in 7 minutes.
So Thank you for the time. If you're interested, there is a 14-day free trial. You can jump in the Drum Better Daily program, hang with us on calls, go through the material. It's in the link as well. If you're interested in a more of an in-person, intimate experience, deep and intimate. I'm kidding. It's not that intimate. There's lots of people there. The Drum Camp's 2024 season, the registration has opened, so that it'll stay open until it closes.
Awesome, awesome, folks. It was awesome.
We have a lot of fun. We just finished up the last one from this season, and last year they sold out in 2 weeks. So we've added a couple more camps with some more spots. So again, go jump on those if you want to. Hopefully we can meet in person. And Puli, thank you again. We will see everybody in the next episode of this. Puli, I'll see you in a couple minutes on the call.
You bet. Thanks, buddy.
You bet.